Welcome back to my video. This is my third time trying to do it, but let's see if it worked this time, man. So, this is about how Finland solved their homelessness problem. So we're gonna get into that. I ain't never been there. I'm in the States right now, United States, and tell more of my story at the end of this video. So let's get right to it.
Considered a problem that doesn't have a solution. But there is one country that may have found it anyway. Finland has developed a unique strategy for getting homeless people off the streets and back into the society, and it aims to completely eradicate homelessness by 2027. And although Japan still has technically the lowest homelessness rate, the Japanese success is actually quite questionable, while Finland has been praised again and again for its results. So how did Finland manage to do it? And why aren't we just doing the same thing everywhere else? This is how Finland solved homelessness. But first, a quick message. If you like what I do, explaining how the world works by going beyond the headlines and challenging what we think we know about, decreasing and have been for several decades. And it's not like other European countries are not trying. They all have shelters, organizations giving out aid, and dedicated national strategies, but most of them, including the UK, Germany, or France, still see their numbers going up rather than going down. So what is Finland doing differently? Well, as they say, if you want average results, do the same thing as everyone else. And if you want unique results, you have to use unique methods as well. And so the Finns have turned the traditional approach to homelessness on its head and committed to a radical strategy that became known as housing first. Basically, there is usually a reason why someone ends up homeless, whether it's because of mental illness, drug addiction, because they lost their job, or something else. But the idea behind how most countries approach homelessness is that the person living on the street should start by sorting out those problems first while living in a shelter, and only after that they can get access to permanent housing. This has been called the staircase approach because the homeless person is basically expected to gradually move up through different levels. They are expected to stop taking drugs, undergo mental health treatments, and if they make progress, they can move on, with the permanent housing as a final reward. But the problem is that this approach is not actually very effective. Quitting drugs or managing serious mental health issues is already difficult when you have a home, and it's basically impossible when you're homeless. In other words, we expect people living on the street to do what many regular people are not able to. And so
Facts.
It's not surprising that most homeless people get stuck on one level of the staircase, as they fail to complete the tasks to move on, and eventually they relapse, get evicted, and go back to the street. So Finland, seeing that the traditional approach was not very effective, decided to turn this on its head and try out something very different. Rather than thinking of housing as a reward for successfully integrating into the society, Finland based its approach on the idea that with a permanent home from the beginning, solving your own problems becomes much easier. And so the state started providing permanent housing in the form of small individual apartments, not as the final reward, but at the very beginning, and to basically any homeless person who asks for it, and without strict conditions. People living in the housing provided by the state are not
The housing first and skipping right over the shelter and hostels. That was an interesting staircase they had though, but let's see how it's working out for them.
required to give up drugs or go to a treatment, and they're not evicted if they relapse. They are, however, required to pay a small rent, which means they need to have an income. And they have a very strong support system which they need to take part in. In most cases, the housing is provided in centers with around 100 homeless people living in small individual apartments that are looked after by a team of around 20 on-site social workers. And they provide support with everything from bureaucracy, job hunting, and getting access to addiction or mental health treatments, and they also keep things from going off the rails. But how it works is one thing, and if it works is another one. So does it? Well, in the mid-1980s, there were around 20,000 homeless people in Finland, and according to national estimates, in 2021, this figure has decreased to just under 4,000.
Man, with the chart, you see it from 1987 to 2018. What do you say? It went from like 20K to what's that? 6? Declining consistently. That's what you like. You know what I'm saying? That's what you like to see. They doing their thing over there in Finland, man.
And so it looks like a success. But is it really? The critics of the Finnish system say that this just hides the problem, and the numbers are artificially decreased by putting everyone in government-paid housing, rather than actually reintegrating them into the society. And that is a legit.
But Finland, they doing. I think that's what everybody do. That's what the states do too. Cause the place I'm in right now, if you can meet certain requirements and you're a certain age and shit like that, they'll put you in houses and stuff. And I think they make like government assisted living and shit like that. So I don't know. I mean, if you want to get integrated back into society, I mean, shit. Some people that's homeless don't want to work regular jobs. I mean, shit. That's how you get integrated back into society. So.
Legitimate criticism. The results
See
are
if I'm
only
talking too soon.
possible because of
Bro,
the
this shit about to
continuous
die again,
support
bro.
paid for by the state.
fuck?
The numbers of those who transition from government housing to living completely independently are quite small, and if you would remove the government support, the homelessness numbers would immediately spike once again. But on the other hand, that's the whole point of the policy. You don't need homeless people to turn into model citizens who are addiction-free and who are completely independent. In the Finnish model, it's already considered a success when you get them off the street and into a controlled, safe environment, when they're able to pay a small rent every month, and when they're slowly, one step at a time, reintegrating back into the society. Now, naturally, this costs a lot of money. The Finnish government spends a lot of money on buying apartments and turning them into homeless housing, subsidizing developers who build this housing, heavily subsidizing the rent, and employing a lot of social workers that work with the homeless people. And that's not cheap. But even so, according to Finnish statistics, it actually financially pays off. A study of financial costs shows that Finland actually saves 15,000 euros a year on every homeless person it houses. Even though it spends money on housing and social workers, it's still a lot cheaper than to bear the cost of emergency care, policing, justice system, and all the costs that come with having homeless people living on the street. And so in the end, it's a model that kind of works for everyone. It's definitely better for the homeless people who don't have to live on the street or in often dangerous temporary shelters. It's better for the regular people who don't have to deal with criminality, drug use, and other issues that come with people living on the street. And it's actually better even for the government that ends up saving money. But if it works in Finland, why aren't we doing it everywhere? And would it be successful? Well, that's a tricky question. And there are both practical and ideological reasons why Finland is still unique in this approach. First, even if you wanted to, it's not actually that easy to just take what Finland is doing and apply it somewhere else. For example, the basic condition to give away housing is that you need to have enough of it. And since most countries are going through a housing crisis, that's not that easy. One of the reasons why Finland is able to do it is because cities in Finland tend to own most of the land. And so they're able to use that to build a lot of social housing units. But that's not common. And so even though this policy is successful in Finland, it can fail in other places. California, for example, has been trying the housing first policy as well for the past 10 years, but it hasn't really seen the same results. And that's because it lacks everything that is required for this policy to be successful. Unlike Finland, California has incredibly strict development rules and really expensive real estate, which means that building social housing in large quantities is kind of impossible. And even then, housing is just a part of it. In order to replicate how it works in Finland, you also need a really strong social security system, a lot of social workers, and access to healthcare, mental health institutions, and addiction treatments. But California doesn't really have any of that. But even more than for practical reasons, this policy is often rejected on ideological grounds. There is a deep-rooted idea that homeless people should deserve housing, rather than just get it, and that doing so creates a bad precedent. Even though in this case, that's not really what the data and the
Okay, this video almost over, so I'm finna say something quick. I don't know if I think most homeless people, I think it's they gotta set it up good as far as like people working and being able, they have to pay a certain amount no matter what it is. I mean, it's like $50, $20 for government assistance living. So that's a W. Now maybe some people do deserve it. The ones who actually got like mental health issues and they can't do this or that type of shit, maybe they do deserve somewhere to live. But most of these niggas, man, work. Simple.
the evidence are telling us. So although Finland has some unique advantages, this model can be applied elsewhere. But in order to be successful, it requires a lot of invested resources, ability to commit for decades rather than for years, and in the end, it needs to be just a part of a wider, well-functioning system of social safety nets that help people from getting off the ground. And so it looks like Finland will probably keep its unique position for a bit longer.
First and foremost, shout out to Finland. Sound like they doing something, you know what I'm saying, a little bit different from where I'm at, which is the United States. But let me tell my story, man. I am currently homeless. I've been homeless for 8 months. It was 5 months. I was homeless for 5 months back in 2024, and right now I'm currently homeless. I have been homeless for this time that I got at the hotel June 21st. What is it? October, June, July, August, September, October. June, July, August, September, October. So I've been for what, 2 months? Was that June or July, August, September? So about 3 months, so 8 months. It's my third time making this video. I'm just hoping that I can save this motherfucker. But still, let me go back over it. But yeah, man, like the first time, shit. I ain't gonna lie, being homeless ain't no joke. I'm homeless. I don't have mental health issues. I don't have what else they say? I don't got drug issues either. I just ain't got no job. So I'm on my third job right now though. Let's see if this one work out. The first one didn't work out when I came over at the band. Let me tell my story real quick. So last year I was homeless because I lost a job. Tried to go live with some relatives. That didn't work out. Was out. I was sleeping outside. I was sleeping outside on the floor, on benches, and on tables. You be sleeping outside. I was sleeping outside for so long I didn't know. But it's like when you start sleeping on concrete and shit, like you literally feel your bones on the concrete. It was like some. I probably explained that wrong, but it was some weird shit. Anyway, I started sleeping in a storage container. I was sleeping in that bitch for like a month, 2 months. It was on my couch with my cover, and I was in there. And then I ended up going to Texas. How that happened? One of the relatives' house I got kicked out of. I ended up going there doing Thanksgiving. See my mama. My mama offered me. She invited me to go to Texas. I said yeah. Now while we was in the car going to Texas, I told her that I was homeless. She didn't know that. But I spent like 6-7 months down there in Texas. 2 weeks I was down there chilling, not doing shit, and then for the rest of the months, for the rest of the time, I was down there trying to find a job. That didn't end up happening. I think I'm end up pissing off my mama somehow. We ended up coming back here. I thought I was visiting. Long story short, I wasn't. She got me a hotel for about 2 months and a week. It was 2 different hotels, which is kind of crazy. I thought we had a conversation about that too. I thought we was gonna get an apartment, but she said she didn't want to put it in her name. I guess she changed her mind. The hotel was better. But anyway, that ended up running out. So then I ended up sleeping outside again for like a day or 2 days. And then I ended up taking my ass to the shelter. And right now I live in this MRM shelter. Now it is better than living outside. I ain't gonna cap. It's better than sleeping outside, I should say, just because you got a bed. But at the same time, that shit is like, they claim to, I almost say it, they claim to be a Christian shelter. And the only reason I say they claim to be, most of them niggas don't move like they Christians in there, bro. They move like it's a job. And that's just what it is. So, but I'm in there right now, and it's decent. I ain't gonna lie, because you do get meals. You get covered, you able to take a shower. So that is, you get to sleep, which is the most important thing. So that is a W, but right now, shit, I'm trying to get up out that motherfucker right now. I had so when I was in the hotels, I had one job, that shit didn't work out. I had a Taco Bell job, that shit ain't work out. I ain't never get a check from that job. Crazy. I worked probably 4, 5, 6 days and never got a check, so I had to find another job. And right now I work at this job called Cedar Gill. It's a sales job. We gonna see if that shit work out. Start next week. And if that shit don't work out, shit, just keep on moving, keep on pivoting until I find a job that work. Find one at work and get my 4th apartment, and then get my life back to going up. Just try to start different shit on the side. See if I can build a career from the ground up. Of course, for certain strategies and shit like that. So yeah, man, starting from the ground again. So right now, currently, I am still homeless. I live in shelter, bro. Shit is crazy. I ain't gonna cap. That's why I wanted to react to this video. But yeah, man, I feel like I could go into. I feel like going to death with more shit, but just give y'all the quick rundown. Oh yeah, I'm coming out with this. I do actually go in more depth. I make music too. I'm coming out with this. What's Homeless 2? That shit dropping between what? The 17th of this month and the 1st of next month. I just gotta really rap it with the mic shit. So Well, that's gonna go more into depth into how I came from Texas and ended up homeless again without the band and shit like that. But yeah, man, the homeless shit ain't nothing to play with, bro. That shit ain't nothing to play with. I ain't gonna cap. And I made a mixtape about the first time I was homeless too. That's how right now. No cap. SoundCloud, LazyEyeDion, no bullshit. But yeah, man, like I said, I'm kind of still excited though. Even though I'm going through this bullshit, it kind of feel like